Superintendent Hoffman? I see you. Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you. So,
Please state your name for the record.
oh, I'm sorry. Katherine Duran. Thank you. Here's a quote. Rules don't allow the board to engage with people who make public comment, except for the exceptions. I've on many occasions personally and publicly praised our very professional, excellent Elk Grove Unified School District Board of Trustees, and I think any reasonable person would agree that the exceptions are relatively rare, they're self-evident, and at least in my experience, they're not abused. Not so during the April 19th board meeting, when that policy was broken after a mom and dad brought their concerns to the board in public comment and a lecture ensued. So number one, it was acknowledged by the trustee who represents the parents, Mr. and Mrs. Scheiber's residential district, that the issues raised were very serious. And then subsequently, the parents' very serious issues were subordinated to the trustee's opinion of the incident in question. Her quote, I wish that we could insulate our students from the divisive tone of national politics, and I do think whatever politics come into the context of public education, we do need to proceed with caution. But my job as a school board member is to take a step back from the emotion and find out a little bit more. So I did take the time to research, or to speak with the principal at Franklin High, and particularly my questions were about, was this presidential candidate presented in a way that was mocking or negative, that was advocating for or against either way? The video that was used saying, turn off the lights, was not something I found to be mocking or inappropriate, which would have raised concerns for me. Where did that come from? This board, I wondered if this board had heard one single comment from either of those parents suggesting that the concern of the parents was the level of respect that was displayed for Donald Trump. Because I clearly heard their very serious concerns, which were specifically their child's safety at a high school rally, and then to add insult to injury, that those comments and concerns had been minimized and dismissed by the principal and vice principal at the high school responsible for the incident in question, who had the nerve to tell the mom that she was choosing to overthink it. Overthink, okay? Loud shouting of angry epithets and chanting of racist to a fever pitch, such that it frightened and traumatized many students.
You got 20 seconds.
Especially given that they were only emulating what they'd seen in media, also a point acknowledged by the trustee. This was not only unbelievably offensive, and by the way, shame, shame, shame on that vice principal for having said that and that mistreatment of that parent. And it would even occur to him
Your
to say something
time's
like
expired.
that.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'll be speaking for the rest of my group if we want to just go ahead and, they're going to yield their time to me, so do we want to do that each time, or?
Okay, give us 1 second, please.
Yeah.
Okay, she's.
Yeah, so you're speaking for the rest of the...
Yeah.
Okay, you'll have 12 minutes.
Thank you.
1 second, please. We can do that.
Yeah, ask them, do they?
Diane, Weil, Courtney, Lackey, Brooke, Lackey, Jorge, Riley, Matt Zukovitsky, are you all yielding your time to Ms. Duran? Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
12 minutes then.
Thank you. So.
Okay, you may begin and you have 12 minutes.
Thank you. So overthink it. Okay, the loud shouting of angry epithets and chanting of racist to a fever pitch that frightened and traumatized many students, especially given that they were only emulating what they'd seen in the media, which was also acknowledged by the trustee.
Excuse me, Catherine?
Yes.
Can you please speak up a little bit louder?
I'm sorry. I feel like I'm shouting. This
Thank
is
you.
far away. So, okay, where was I? Yeah, that this was also cause for the people of the district to be concerned for the trustee's judgment, okay? For the trustee to be the apparent voice of superior thinking, to suggest that parents had been blinded by emotion was just insulting, not only to Mr. and Mrs. Schreiber, but also to the many other parents and Elk Grove residents who were also alarmed by this incident, where the video of Donald Trump was used to kick off a black light rally. It was clear that the trustee had investigated one side of the matter, and then erroneously concluded that the cause for the parents concerned was that that it had offended their political choice. Trustee said it was not reasonably foreseeable that the students would react the way that they did. Under the current political climate of this country, really, when there's not even there's no mainstream news outlet that isn't hyper-focused on campaigns, specifically where the old maxim, if it bleeds, it leads, takes a backseat to Donald Trump. Frankly, I have seriously questioned the trustee's judgment. But minimizing a real and present concern by comparing it to a completely irrelevant issue is divisive. Turning it into an issue of censorship, when that was not in any way germane to this issue, no one is that clueless, and that divisiveness was not lost on informed citizens. Safety and security, that was the concern of these parents. Why? Trustee said that we couldn't possibly have known that there was that we could not have foreseen any reaction of any kind. As a matter of fact, I experienced this myself just a few days after that April 19th meeting. It was on the 29th, when Donald Trump was set to speak at the hotel where I happened to be staying, and a protest arose. And the entire hotel was on lockdown. No one could come or go for hours. Was that an isolated incident? Was this all reasonably foreseeable? Let's see. So we have 2 teens arrested in Costa Mesa, June 7th. We have a March 11th, 2016, Chicago rally canceled after violent scuffles. CBS News, April 28th. Kind of a bloody mess. Horses. They threw rocks at horses and broke the horse's legs, and I don't know, I heard that the horse had to be euthanized. Did it go on for, was this just an isolated incident just this year? No. November 2015. October 2015. This has been going on for a year. I just didn't have any more ink or paper left much from to print more pictures, but there's plenty, and it's covering the news every day. So I doubt that we could classify this as not reasonably foreseeable. Next, the trustee tells us none of that means that we should censor the opinion of the students. This was never an issue of political preference or freedom of speech. Could this have been an honest misunderstanding of the parents' concern? I don't think so. Why? Because the parents were never asked. Instead, the issue was used as an opportunity to make something it never was. The trustee, who thought the community was in such a need of an education ourselves on teachable moments in political discourse, that it was necessary, if not expedient, to break policy and let the adult education commence. Parents were in such disbelief in the way that they were treated by the vice principal at their daughter's high school, only to have the school board, their trustee, their representative, add insult to injury. Well, if you're going to break policy, you had better get it right. Ignoring the parents' real concerns, in fact, torturing it in order to interject irrelevant issues, is extremely divisive. This was a word that was used several times in 4.5 minutes. The public only gets 3 minutes. And it was extremely transparent. These comments were not germane to the parents' actual concerns, and their actual concerns were never addressed. That reaction of Franklin High students under the circumstances was not reasonably foreseeable, makes us question the motive of any board member who would make such a claim, let alone the school administrator who is presumed to know the demographic and even the political climate on campus, especially with all the contention we see going on in the whole country right now. So, give me the slightest break. But wait. Add to this one-way chat, this is another quote. Talk to the parents of Muslim and Sikh students to get some reaction about what that experience is like. Are you kidding me? Hardly anything surprises me anymore in this country, but this was jaw-dropping. This was unbelievable. That this was never about race. This never had anything to do about race. And to interject race into this was an unbelievable, completely unacceptable. But let's just say for a moment, let's just try it on for a minute. Let's just say that a Muslim public figure with whom I am personally very close had been the subject of that video. Endearing to some people, but to others in the same scenario began chanting equally inappropriately, terrorist, terrorist. And I wonder if the trustee would still have had delivered the same diatribe, an unsolicited, inappropriate lecture. Minimizing this real and present concern, again, comparing it with multiple completely irrelevant issues is unbelievably divisive. If you're going to break policy, did the vice principal really not see that the reaction was not, that reaction that they got was coming? No. I think that it was not reasonably foreseeable. It was unreasonable not to expect it. It was stated that our children are future leaders, and I got to say that was my last straw. Language, ladies and gentlemen, matters. Let's not confuse our children with talk of leadership of our democracy, because America is not a democracy. We have neither. America is a constitutional republic. In a republic, we elect public servants to be our representative voice in government. Mr. and Mrs. Schreiber, as well as the rest of the community, are not well served when government speaks down to its master. And in this case, not only were we subjected to really remarkable condescension, but point after point, and in the YouTube video, you can slide to exactly 1 hour and 35 seconds to 1 hour and 35 minutes, exactly. In fact, at least 35 points by my count, not only inaccuracies, but of unapologetic political rhetoric delivered from a perception of perceived superiority. And that's my line in the sand. You hadn't heard from me in a while. I haven't been here for over a year until April, because I've been busy learning. Not learning what Common Core is all about, but in fact, I know that inside and out. In fact, to understand why the bottom line of the test is the abolition of school boards and to local representative government, it's far more important to know what the badness of Common Core is and what it isn't. It isn't in any way related to education. You're probably not going to enjoy the presentation you're going to see today on high-density Wi-Fi in the schools. In fact, you should be shocked and horrified. You'll be equally appalled at the information you received on SB 277, state-mandated 69-dose chemical injections required for K-12, how it came into being, how it violates the most basic property rights and liberty of Americans, and what this board is expected to do about it. Americans are waking up. Americans are no longer willing to accept the illusion that we have rights and the liberty to freely exercise them. The only legitimate reason for government at all is to secure the liberty and the rights of the people. When government becomes destructive of those ends, it is the duty of the people to alter or abolish it. Government has indeed become destructive of these ends. It's not our chosen structure of government. It's not our republic that has failed, but it's specifically the failure of our education system to properly educate its citizenry. It is time to alter or abolish it, or is it time for we the people, where all political power is derived, to take appropriate and rightful control? So now we are going to educate you. Local government school boards are not to be subservient to state and federal government. This board does not need to take its marching orders from politicians on high. In fact, this layer of government is to ensure that ever-increasing state and federal encroachment, which you see as trustees are entrusted to guard against, and trying to use the schools to solve every single social problem that exists in the world instead of letting school be school. School is not for solving social issues. It is school. It can't. By evidence of the ordinary decorum of the school board that Elk Grove has come to expect is a safe bet that all of you have an excellent grasp on Robert's Rules of Order, and we appreciate that. Over the last 5 years, discovering that then researching voraciously the depths of federal intrusion on local education, I've seen firsthand the depravity of our state legislatures, never more crystal clear than the fast-tracking Senate Bill SB 277. In addition, I've attended and watched video after video in hundreds of school board meetings,
You have
State
20
Board of
seconds
Ed,
left.
City Council, as well as many other government meetings, not just in our town, but across the country. I'm connected to educators, legislators, parents, watchdogs, and warriors across the entire U.S. I've got a great network. I'm going to end it right there and pick it up see if I have the opportunity at the end of the meeting. I have about 3.5 more minutes to go, so I hope that hopefully you will allow me to finish that. Would you like to do that now?
No, thank you.
Because I'm going to have somebody else do public comment.
No, there's no more public comment.
Okay.
Thank you, Chad.
Hi, I'm just a resident in Acampo.
Please state your name
Oh,
for
sorry.
record. too.
Sheila Revel. I live in Acampo.
So, I'll finish where I left
All
off.
right, you will have
6 minutes.
6 minutes, okay?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. So in these meetings, what I've discovered may come as no big surprise to most of America. Most often, there's such an impressive degree of decorum and professionalism in public meetings, making government feel very official, very large, and intimidating. Best left to those who know the system and know how to run government. Better stated, government at every level is out of control. Why? Because unlike what our kids are being taught in schools, we don't have government by consensus, where the majority rules. Why? Because 5,000 uninformed constituents do not have a stronger case and must not have more influence over government than just one very well-informed, seemingly crazy lady. Why? Because that, ladies and gentlemen, is democracy. And what they don't tell you about democracy is that when the majority wins, the minority loses. That's why we don't have a democracy. In fact, our founders did everything in their power to separate us from democracy. I have good news for you. You didn't swear an oath to support and defend Robert's Rules. You swore to support and defend and properly apply the Constitution of the United States of America. That is your rule book. No law contrary to the Constitution can be valid. If it's not in there, you can't do it. It's not a guideline. It's not just a good idea. It's the law of the land. The Constitution of the United States, as well as the U.S. Code, requires elected appointed government officials to swear an oath of office. Generally speaking, an individual, except the president, elected or appointed to an office or honor or profit in the civil service of uninformed services, shall take the following oath. I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear truth, faith, and allegiance to the same. I will take this obligation freely without mental reservation or purpose of evasion, that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office on which I am about to enter, so help me God. Currently, there are 4 egregious usurps of government authority, which have been called to which will be actually called to your attention. And by the end of this week, you will receive all documentation you will ever need to render the appropriate decisions on each of these major issues for Elk Grove Unified School District. The offenses discussed here today, and these four, which we'll later discuss, are not unforgivable. As I've said many times publicly, that Elk Grove Unified School District is super duper, for the most part, very professional, very intelligent. We couldn't ask for better people. And I could be wrong, but I believe I speak for most of the community when I say that I expect an acknowledgement and a public apology for Mr. and Mrs. Schreiber for this behavior. And if our board is truly lacking a thorough knowledge of the supreme law of the land, which defines representative government, then that they were elected to serve, that they will then immediately work to correct that deficiency and know that each will be held accountable. Government is presumed to know the law, and ignorance is no excuse. When we, the people, elected you, you entered into a contract with the people. We delegated a certain amount of power to you, and because we trust you. The Constitution is a contractual obligation. As trustees, you have a fiduciary responsibility to execute the contract. When you took office, you swore an oath or affirmation to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. When that oath is violated, at minimum, it is an act of perjury and treason. Thomas Jefferson said, "An enlightened citizenry is indispensable for the functioning of a republic. Self-government is not possible unless the citizens are educated sufficiently to enable them to exercise oversight. It is therefore imperative that the nation see to it that a suitable education be provided for all its citizens." If you don't know the contract, then I submit you can hardly be trusted with its proper application. But remember, we like you. We want to keep you. You've heard me speak this before. We are doing all we can to keep local representative government, so help us help you, and listen to what we're saying. Please know that the master has awakened, that we are taking control, and the servant has played master for quite long enough. I have 4 issues that is actually a demand. We demand that the board end the unlawful contract with what we're calling the U.S. government, the CCSSO, the Council of Chief State School Officers, and the NGA for Common Core for the state standards, and every other tie that binds you to the federal government. SB 277 is an unlawful, unconstitutional, non-law law. AB 1266 was voted down by Californians twice. This is the governor's signature bill, his legacy bill, and I don't care, and we don't care, we don't want it. The other is high-density Wi-Fi, unless and until it can be proven safe, as opposed to not shown to be harmful,
20
which
seconds.
is actually a lie. I don't blame you. For well over a century, we've been deliberately dumbed down. We are all products of essentially the same education system, just to varying degrees. We don't learn true American history, civics, the founding, and our defining documents. So I don't blame you for what's been done from this minute past. This is how we take proper control of our
Expired, please.
government. We demand local government be obedient to the Constitution. And thank you for listening. Thank you, Mr. President.